I wanted to talk about that, but I'm going to push some of that to the end because I want to talk about what I think is kind of unique here, and that is, you had this opportunity. You were in the sheriff's department. You got elected sheriff, and then you were moved on to corrections as the warden of the state prison. Talk to us why that change in direction, maybe a little bit, and how the things you'd learned in service kind of came to bear as well.
Yeah, so for me, I had done 26 years at the Kennebec County Sheriff's Office. I was the chief for 5, and I was the elected sheriff for 9. When I left for Iraq in '04, I truly didn't understand the impact of war. I'd been in the Army system for 23 years, but you don't know until you know. And the fighting in Fallujah, a lot of casualties, and I saw a lot of sacrifice in the city. And so when I came back, I was a bit changed. And so, I had post-traumatic stress as a result of not only the time that I served in Fallujah, but also the 20 plus years that I had served in law enforcement with the unattended deaths, the suicides, the self-inflicted gunshot wounds, the fatal accidents, the rescue diving. All of that was kind of, combined to kind of place me where I was. And it was there that I recognized that there was a lot of work that could be done with veterans returning and those that struggled with the criminal justice system. And, how could I help? And so that's when I began the journey of creating a veterans pod at the Kennebec County Jail. I served on the Maine Military Community Network as the chair. I did an awful lot of work with veterans, both law enforcement veterans and then those that had been arrested and placed in jail. And so I found that work to be very meaningful. And the moving on and retiring from the sheriff's office, moving on to the Maine State Prison as the warden, gave me a larger platform, larger budget. I could get more done, I felt, and make a difference in people's lives. And that's when I created the Veterans Pod there. And there we have 64 veterans that are co-located in that pod, and they have the shared experiences of being veterans. And we have Vietnam vets, Iraq, Afghanistan, Panama. We have every flavor you can imagine, every branch. And that shared experience of being in the military really gives that unit a special feel. And a lot of good things happening in that unit.
Well, and it's, there's this interesting line, you sort of mentioned it, which is there's a lot of veterans who are in law enforcement, and I certainly have those in my family, and you have far too many veterans who are on the wrong side of the law. And I think the FBI statistics are something like 8% of everybody incarcerated is a veteran, which is way above the national numbers. Mm-hmm. And the sacrifice of war and service and what you see sort of adds up over time. You noticed it from your law enforcement career and your military career. You said after a while it just became a lot to carry, and you had to begin addressing some of the PTSD and other issues just to make sure you stayed on the right side of the line, didn't you?
Yeah, for sure. So when I came back, my symptoms of post-traumatic stress were quick to anger and quick to emotion. And so when I went to Iraq, I thought it was important for me to come back and tell the story. I was a 40-year-old, and I did a lot of public speaking, and I'd speak to groups. I brought a lot of my sort of war artifacts with me, and I'd tell them when I began to speak, I said that there may be a time when I'm speaking to you that I have to pause and I'll get emotional, but it's just a natural response to the trauma that I've faced both in law enforcement and in Iraq. And I did need to get help. I went to Togus VA, and I received some help outpatient. I would go every Tuesday at 1:00, and I would dread it because it would be like ripping off a scab, and I'd find any excuse not to go. And my brother, who was retired Army, he's an infantryman, and my wife sort of teamed up on me and ensured that I went, and they followed up on it. And so did the VA. They'd call me and, where are you? Why aren't you here? And then over time, through therapy, my symptoms were diminished, and my triggers didn't happen as often, but I still I was in law enforcement, so I still carried a gun. I still smelled the brake free, the oil, that same lubricant we'd use when I pulled my M4 up to my nose. I'd still go to gun calls. I'd still see, death and dying. And so there are still triggers, but you just have to find a way to navigate through that. And there are a lot of paramedics, EMTs, law enforcement officers that have served and are military veterans, and there is impact. But I would say this: there's no dishonor in getting help, and you and your family deserve it. You've earned the help, the assistance, and your life will be better for it.
Like what you heard? Listen to this full episode and more on the Apple Podcasts app, Blog Talk Radio, Google Podcasts, or iHeartRadio. And now streaming on Amazon Music, Audible, and Spotify.